Hey guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another Retro RPG. The end of another week, the end of another poll. We've got an absolutely amazing win for Marvel superheroes. Now this has been a suggestion by a viewer, but I do have some experience with this game, but it's over 30 years ago, so it might as well be a brand new game to me. Now we'll be looking at the PDF, so we're going over to the computer desktop in a wee second, and I'll be back at the end of the video with some other channel related stuff and some other poll related stuff. But before I do that, I'd like to take a moment to talk about my Patreons, who this week I have been told know that with great power comes great responsibility. Because these are fantastic people who help make all of this possible, allowing me to look at older games and more obscure games like this, rather than just chasing the views that the YouTube algorithm tells me I should be chasing. Now, if you'd like to join them and help support the channel, or you'd like to see these videos a week early, or you'd like to see one of the other levels of patronage we've got, then there's a Patreon link in the description down below. If you check it out, it'd be very much appreciated. But anyway, let's have a look at Marvel superheroes. So, this is Marvel Superheroes. Came out in 1984 from TSR. And originally came in a box set, which since I've downloaded the PDF, makes no use here at all. But it came with 3 books in that. We had the Battle Book, the Campaign Book, and a sample adventure, Day of the Octopus. So everything you needed to get started. Also in the box were a bunch of battle maps, some tokens, and some sample characters. I believe it's the 4 heroes on the cover there. So Spiderman, Captain Marvel, Captain America, and The Thing. Now, I downloaded these from a wonderful website, MSH Gamer, which has all the versions, the rules, include the more advanced versions, and virtually every adventure that was published for it, which are loads and loads. It was a well-supported game. And I'll try and remember to link to that website in the description down below if you're interested in seeing all those things. And they're well worth looking at. It's some fantastic stuff. But going into the first book. So it starts off with a short cartoon showing a bunch of kids around a table, because the game is targeted towards kids. And they are Spider-Man and Captain Marvel. And they get into a tussle with some people robbing a shop. Some thugs throwing furs in the back of a truck. And it kind of shows you how the game's going to play, in a very rough fashion. And then we go in, and we've got Spider-Man introducing us to it and talking through what the game is, and really goes over how to use percentile dice, which I think is really nice. In 1984, they wouldn't be that common. It also includes this section here. Use the crayon to fill in the numbers on the dice and wipe off any excess wax with a tissue or cloth. This makes the dice easier to read. But of course, at this period, you would get your dice blank, just with the engraved numbers on them, and you'd rub over that with wax to fill in the number to make them easier to read. Now, I have a bunch of these dice still in my collection which are completely blank, because I didn't know to do that. I'd never read the instructions, and the wax got discarded because it was messy, and the blank dice remained. But I like seeing that. It brings back so many memories. Carrying on, we've got a section on what is a hero, and we discover why this version of Marvel Superheroes is generally called Phase Rip, because it's the 7 attributes you use. Fighting, agility, strength, endurance, reason, intuition, and psyche. And it goes through all of those. So we've got fighting, talks through the ability to punch, poke, jab, kick, trip, etc. The agility, the ability to hit an opponent with a weapon that is thrown or fired. Strength measures how much you can lift and how hard you can punch with your bare hands. Endurance measures how far a hero can push himself. Reason equals brains or raw smarts. Intuition is wits and common sense. Psyche measures force of will. Also allows mental powers or magical spells. And you have rough levels on these. So you have your ranks, depending on what you got when you rolled the character up. So the least one is feeble, then we've got poor, typical, good, excellent, remarkable, incredible, amazing, monstrous, unearthly, which is the highest you can roll at starting, and then class 1000, beyond human ability to comprehend. These are the major powers, Galactus and all that sort of people, who are virtually godlike. We've got a description of superpowers, talents, which are the sort of skill things, So it mentions Spider-Man. I've always loved chemistry and I've been taking photos for the Daily Bugle since I was a student at Midtown High. And the way those work is basically they increase the attribute you're using by one level. So if you've got chemistry and good intelligence, good reasoning, you'd be rolling as excellent on that. Assigning superpowers and talents. Variable abilities, so your health, karma, resources, and popularity. Talks about healing here. Karma, you can spend it on dice rolls to increase them, or you can save it up to increase abilities later on. And then we've got feats, which are the skill tests of the system. A function of exceptional ability or talent. And it explains those. It gives you the rough areas that your abilities feature and how to roll them, which includes a table on the back of the book. But we'll go through how the rules work exactly in a rules breakdown I'll record. The thing I really like is it puts into the GM's judgment. So a superhero who's pretty strong will easily be able to lift a chair. Spider-Man might need to roll a feat to see if he can lift a van, but he will not be able to lift a plane. But if you went for someone like Ant-Man when he's in giant form, Giant Man, well, he'll be able to lift a van and throw it around really easily because he's massive. But he would then require a test to lift something like a plane, which is going to be about his size or slightly bigger. And something like Galactus, who is absolutely massive, can throw planes around quite easily. I don't know what would be big enough for Galactus to require a strength test. But that's how it works. The Games Master decides what's reasonable for the character first of all. Things, material strength, so if you're trying to break something or lift something especially heavy. Moving around in combat. And then we've got the combat section itself. Battle effects, what happens, because fighting can have different effects. Different types of weapons and their damage. An example of a sample sparring between Spider-Man and Captain America. And talking about what adventures are. And then on the back, the universal table. So depending on what your ability is, you'll be rolling on a column on this table, and white is a fail, green, yellow, and red have differing levels of success, but generally they all succeed. And the campaign book, which brings back so many memories because it brings back superheroes of the era, which I haven't seen around for years. I absolutely adored looking through this. So we've got a table of contents with power rosters, a section about heroes, section on hardware, campaigns, and the origin of. So, chapter 1, Heroes. It talks about the power rosters and talks about all the abilities. So, fighting abilities. Aunt May and Professor X are going to be feeble in fighting because Aunt May's elderly, Professor X stuck in a wheelchair. But we go right up to Thor and Hercules being unearthly levels of that. Agility likewise goes through, giving you a rough idea what all the characters would have. Strength, endurance, reasoning, intuition, and then psyche. And on the side with psyche is a picture of Machine Man. And I haven't seen him around for years and years. And this was one of my favourite heroes. I really liked the idea of this robot hero who could just bring devices out. Although it was the 70s and 80s, so it was really silly things like his feet would turn into roller skates and whatever. Variable abilities, talking those through. Common weapons, different vehicles, other costs related to the character. And then we go into magic, talking about how that works. We've got hardware, so these sort of special equipment. We've obviously got like the X-Men plane there, the Blackbird crashing. But we talk about vehicles in combat, vehicles with weapons, vehicle damage from combat, types of vehicles. including Ghost Rider's bike. And as I was saying, in the 70s, roller skating seems to have been really important to superheroes, because there we've got Iron Man, who can fly because he's got thrusters and all that, but to get somewhere quickly, he's using roller skates on this occasion. More different vehicles, heavy artillery, how to build things, kit bashing stuff together, sentry robots, bug machines, etc. Just giving examples of what you could do. Alien technology. Now we're on to chapter 3, which has this across the top of the page image of the superheroes doing very mundane things. You know, Dr. Octopus in a phone booth, Captain Marvel walking her dog, the Hulk drilling the road for some reason. Really seems a bit weird. Anyway, it's campaigns, so we're talking through different types of adventures the hero can have and karma they get for doing it. You know, stopping violent crimes, losing it for committing crimes. And all of those are detailed out. Including things like breaking a date and missing dates, because those are the kind of things which happen to heroes in Marvel stories, where it will have an effect on their life. What else we got? Practice. It points out that characters must practice once per week or lose karma points. We've got random encounters, non-player characters, reactions that crowds will have. Government and law. This is apparently written by Henry Peter Gyrich. I remember him being a sort of government bad guy from the comics back in those days. We've got animals. Special environments in case they're fighting bad guys under the water or in space. Parallel dimensions, the other races of man, including the Eternals. And we've got a word from the bad guys, talking out how they work. And then the game master, the judge, we've got a section for them, talking about how they need to be balanced. And they must be accurate. You need not memorize the rules, but you should know how to conduct a battle and know how to find a rule if a question occurs during the game. Judge must be neutral. Prepare your adventures in advance. And then we've got a section on the origin of, so character creation. So we're going through the different steps of rolling up your abilities, some blank slates there for you to draw your costume over, I suppose, explanations of different powers, well, whether you can fly, glide, leap, lightning speed, teleportation, different types of nature control, energy control, body control. I remember there being a complete book of abilities. I remember that being really, really cool to look through. I think I used it for inspiration in some of the stuff I once put together in the 90s. I borrowed the stuff. But the book itself was packed with amazing abilities, so many different heroes stuff. Mental powers, body alterations, including claws if you want to create your own Wolverine. Weapons, vehicles, sidekicks, and alter egos. Some advice about magic. And then we've got the section on advancement. And then we go through character creation. They're creating a hero called Mach 1. And we go through rolling up all his stats, determining their variable abilities, determining their powers, and a blank character sheet before we get to the index. Some nice wee adverts at the back for Dragon Magazine, finest white metal figures, Adventure Continues for Dungeons & Dragons, an advert for Star Frontiers, which I must get around to covering at some point. And on the back cover is another version of the Universal Table. And finally we've got the adventure, Day of the Octopus, which is a starting adventure. You're using pre-generated characters, using Spiderman, Captain Marvel, Captain America, and the Thing. And it goes through a sort of standard encounter. They go up against some ordinary thugs. Then they get attacked by some supervillains who they have to fight off as they continue their sort of patrol. They have to, or they discover they're being controlled by Dr. Octopus. So they follow the clues. There's some investigation section. They reach Dr. Octopus's headquarters and have a battle against him. Whether they get captured or released is then, or they defeat him, is detailed then. But it goes on to a battle against a giant robot that Dr. Octopus has created. And they have to defeat this massive robot before it destroys New York. The Octodroid. And I've got some villain rosters here: Dr. Octopus, Radioactive Man, Scorpion, Beetle, Fixer, and the Octodroid robot. And that's it. I really like it. I remember playing this once back in the mid-80s, and it was a load of fun. And I've had pleasant memories of it ever since, but just never got around to playing it again. It's a nice, simple system, it's fast, it leaves a lot of control in the Games Master's hands, so he can just tailor the adventure to the players, but they can try almost anything. He can just rule what's right and what's wrong before allowing them a dice roll on it. So that was Marvel Superheroes, and that won the poll this week with some 29% of the vote. But it wasn't always going to be that way. For the first couple of days, it was a three-way tie between it, Edge of the Empire, and Mutants in Orbit. And Edge of the Empire, in fact, drew ahead at one point, and I definitely thought it was going to be that. However, in the comments, it was always Marvel Superheroes that everybody wanted, and it ended up winning in the end. So it got 29%, Edge of the Empire came in on 25%, Mutants in Orbit came in on 19%, and behind those was the Soviet Vehicles Guide for Twilight 2000 on 14%, and the Triangle for the Star Trek role-playing game on only 13%, which is kind of sad because the Triangle is an iconic book for Star Trek. It's kind of sad it didn't do better, but alas, not this time. We'll get to it in the fullness of time. We'll eventually do it. Now, as usual, they're all cleared out of the poll. And we're back to a Retro Adventures poll. And I thought it's been a while since I've done any Shadowrun. So it's an all Shadowrun poll, because Shadowrun tends to reign triumphant. So rather than putting some other games, let's get Shadowrun out of our system for a wee while and put them all in. So, out of the oldest adventures that were published for Shadowrun that I haven't covered yet, first up we've got Elven Fire, which came out in 1991. Ivy and Chrome, which also came out in 1991. Dark Angel, which came out in 1993. A Killing Glare, also 1993. And Celtic Double Cross, also 1993. So quite old adventures from the early days, first and second edition of Shadowrun. Now, none of these really stick in my head. I can't comment on any of them. I've got vague memories of a couple of them being about sports stars. And Dark Angel does have some vague memories for me. But none of them stick out as absolutely iconic. But perhaps when I get around to reviewing them before I do my video, it will bring out some memories. So it'll be nice to look through these and see if they are more memorable than I thought. So what else have I been up to? Well, on Drive Through RPG, I've been releasing Aztec character classes. Now this is part of my drive as I'm going towards writing a campaign and series of adventures where people from a space and time are drawn together to fight a certain threat. And they're drawn there by something that I won't reveal yet. But I've done Wild West ones, pirate ones, Victorian horror, and lots more to allow players a wide option of different things they can choose to be. Now these are available, as I said, on Drive Through RPG, but also they're available on a shared Google Drive for patrons of Laird or Librarian status. So if you're interested in seeing all of those, there's now some 500 files up on the shared Google Drive. If you check out the Patreon in the description down below, and you can see how to gain access to all this. Over on RPGgamer.org, well, I've been doing more of the Knights of the Old Republic comic, doing a review one day and stats the next day. And the storyline's absolutely fascinating me. There's lots of really interesting stuff. We're having a great conversation in the chat as people remember this comic from the decade and a half ago it came out. Some great storylines in there. Dark Horse Comics really did some good Star Wars stuff. But anyway, I think I've been wittering on for quite long enough, so thank you very much for watching. As always, most of all, you look after yourselves. I'll catch you later. Bye now.